September 19th, 1948. Wells' restaurant on 135th Street was more than a place to eat. It was the sanctuary of the kingdom. Inside, the air was a thick tapestry of fried chicken, expensive bourbon, and the sweet, lingering smoke of Pall Mall cigarettes. The jukebox was low, humming a Dizzy Gillespie tune that seemed to bounce off the red leather booths. In the far corner sat the king. Bumpy Johnson didn't need a throne. He had a booth with a clear view of both doors. Across from him sat Mamie. She was draped in silk that caught the light with every breath, her pearls glowing against the dim atmosphere. She wasn't just his wife. She was his compass. They were eating steak, medium rare, cut with a kind of surgical precision that told you everything you needed to know about the man holding the knife. No wasted motion, no unnecessary noise. Then the heavy brass doors swung open. The warmth of the restaurant was sucked out by a draft of cold, wet air. Sal The Butcher Bonanno walked in. He was 6'2" of pure Brooklyn muscle, wrapped in a suit that cost more than most people made in a year. Behind him were 6 men. Their coats were heavy, bulging with the unmistakable weight of iron. The restaurant went dead. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Even the steam rising from the plates seemed to stop in mid-air. Sal didn't wait for an invite. He marched to the booth and stood over the table, his shadow swallowing Mamie's plate. Bumpy didn't look up. He just kept cutting his steak. The sound of the knife against the porcelain was the only thing anyone could hear. "Bumpy!" Sal's voice was a jagged blade. "My Uncle Joe thinks it's time for a change. The numbers in Harlem? They're Italian business now. We'll give you 10% to keep playing the big man, but the keys to the kingdom stay with us." Bumpy set his knife down. He picked up his white linen napkin and dabbed the corners of his mouth. He looked at Mamie. Her eyes were like flint, cold, sharp, and unafraid. She didn't flinch. She didn't look for an exit. She simply stared at Sal with a contempt so deep it made the air turn to ice. That's when Sal lost his nerve. He looked at Bumpy, then at the silent room, and the word slipped out. The slur. The one word you never say to a man of Bumpy's stature, especially not in front of the Queen of Harlem. "Listen, Sal spat. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." The clink of Mamie's fork hitting her plate sounded like a gunshot. Bumpy's hand moved. Sal's men reached for their waistbands, but Bumpy didn't pull a gun. He reached into his vest and pulled out a straight razor. He opened it slowly. The steel reflected the neon light from the window, a silver sliver of death. He placed it gently on the table next to his steak. Bumpy stood up. He didn't rush. He moved like a storm that had all the time in the world. He leaned in until he was inches from Sal's face. "You brought 6 guns," Bumpy whispered, his voice so calm it made Sal's blood run cold. "But you forgot where you are. Look around you, Sal." Sal glanced around. He saw Thomas, the waiter, who Bumpy had saved from death. He saw the cook in the back with a meat cleaver, whose son Bumpy had kept out of jail. He saw 40 people who didn't see a gangster. They saw a protector. They weren't customers anymore. They were a wall of silent fury. "Every person in this room belongs to me," Bumpy said. "You can pull those triggers. Maybe you'll kill me, but you won't make it to the door. These people will tear the suits off your backs before the police even turn the corner. You walked into my house and disrespected my wife. Now you have a choice." The silence was absolute. Sal was sweating now, the droplets falling onto the checkered tablecloth. he realized he hadn't walked into a restaurant. He had walked into a trap. Bumpy leaned in closer and delivered the 6 words that would haunt the 5 families for decades. "Your uncle will bury you tomorrow." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. Bumpy was telling him that if he didn't fix this in the next 10 seconds, Sal was already a ghost. Sal swallowed hard. His pride was gone, replaced by a primitive, shaking terror. He looked at Mamie. "Mrs. Johnson," he stammered, his voice cracking, I apologize. The word. I shouldn't have said it." Bumpy sat back down. He picked up his fork as if nothing had happened. "Get out," he said quietly, "and tell Joe that if he wants Harlem, he better bring an army. Because 6 men is just an insult." Sal and his crew backed away, moving like men who had just looked into the mouth of hell. When the doors closed behind them, the restaurant erupted, but Bumpy just squeezed Mamie's hand under the table. He knew the war wasn't over, but he knew one thing for certain. In Harlem, respect was the only currency that never devalued. Narrator outro. They say power is measured in bullets. But that night, Bumpy and Mamie proved it's measured in loyalty. Everything